Hey guys, today we're going to be taking a look at my spell counter deck. Now, a spell counter deck is pretty much what it sounds like. You just generate spell counters, you use it to generate effects, and do a bunch of additional things. A lot of bouncing around between where the spell counters go, where they get placed from. It's all based around the field card, which I will talk about. This is my first attempt at a spell counter deck, so it's going to be a little more experimental. I'm trying out some ideas, but of course you guys can let me know what you think, and I'll update it as I go along. But just a warning, this is my first build of this deck type, so we'll see how it goes. So first off in this deck, we're going to be running 2 Apprentice Magician. Allows us to bring out things really easily, allows us to make plays. Because you special summon things in face down defense mode, it actually works out really well with some of the other cards we want to activate, and additionally the spell counter power that gives us some additional things we can do. So I really like this card for this deck type. We're also running 2 Breaker, the Magical Warrior. I feel like this card is very powerful in this deck. The big thing about this card is it doesn't have a restriction for once per turn, so as long as you can keep using spell counters, you'll be able to really blow up your opponent's back row. So Breaker becomes more powerful. I was considering putting 3 in this deck because he's just so good, but 2 is definitely fine. And then we're running 2 Chaos Sorcerer in this deck. So Chaos Sorcerer obviously is a spellcaster, so we're going to be using him. He's very important in order to bring out our synchros in a very easy way, so I find that he flows really well with the deck. He's the reason we're not running BLS, because we want specific synchro combination plays with spellcasters. So BLS, if you want to run that, you can definitely run that, but Chaos Sorcerer is just in here to make certain plays for us. We're also running 2 Crusader of Endymion. This one is more of a beater, has additional effect that can be useful at certain times, but again, nice having a spellcaster beater in this deck. Then we're also running 2 Defender, really nice in this deck because if you can generate those spell counters and keep protecting our monsters, you'll be able to really just lay out the field in a really nice way. Defender has really decent stats as well. And then 2 Effect Veiler, just really good with this deck. We can special summon this easily. We can use it to deal with effects. We don't have to run Fiendish Chain. We aren't running traps. You use it with the combination plays to bring out synchros, so it just works out really well with this deck type. We're also running 1 Endymion, sort of an alternate boss in this deck, which can be brought out decently easily with all the spell counters we can generate. So Endymion becomes pretty powerful. I do like his effect a lot. And then we're running 1 Genex ally Birdman, I think the only non-spellcaster in this deck. I just find that this is really nice in order to bump things and get out a synchro that you need to get at a certain period, which I think could be really useful if you want to get our Arcanite. The thing about Arcanite is that he doesn't require the tuner to be a spellcaster, so I find that Genex can just work really well with some of the things you want to do, especially with this next card, Magical Exemplar, which will allow you to generate spell counters really fast and special summon from the graveyard. But as I was saying, you could bounce with Genex, you can special summon with Exemplar, get out whatever synchro you want very quickly. So I do like kind of the combination plays we do have access to. 1 Magician of Faith, very nice to get a spell card that we want to make certain plays. Additionally, we can combo this with Apprentice Magician. You could definitely run more Magician of Faith, it's just up to you. I only had room for 1 in my deck type. Then 1 Night's End Sorcerer, you can definitely run this at 2, maybe not 3, but 2 is fine. It depends on your build. Because I'm running Genex, I probably wouldn't run 2, but it's really up to you and kind of how many tuners you have. This card combos really well with some of the other stuff you want to do with this deck. He gets special summoned pretty easily with some of the other stuff you're trying to do. So obviously removing things from our opponent's graveyard can be very powerful. And then running 2 Royal Magical Library, just giving us some draw power in this deck, which is very nice. Obviously, spell cards are going to be the star of this deck in order to generate those counters. Allure of Darkness with kind of a half-dark deck. Magical Citadel of Endymion. This is kind of the whole basis of the deck type. It protects itself, it generates spell counters, it allows spell counter effects to activate. It's just a crazy card overall and just makes it flow really well. I'll talk about why we don't have 3, but mostly because it protects itself. So you don't really need more than 2, I'd say, especially because you have Terraforming. And we run Terraforming because of how we generate spell counters, so it makes a lot of sense. And then 2 Miracle Synchro Fusion. We can use this to bring out Supreme Arcanite Magician, which is another very powerful card we have access to. 2 Pot of Duality, another spell card that's easy to use to give us some additional power. Raigeki, Soul Charge, Spell Power Grasp, obviously a free card in this deck to generate spell counters. 2 Spellbook of Power, 3 Spellbook of Secrets, 2 Spellbook of Wisdom. Just a little bit of spellbooks in this deck to support the deck type. Just makes a lot of sense with what you're trying to do. And as I was saying, Terraforming, taking the place of a 3rd Citadel, which just makes a lot of sense. So now for the extra deck. In the extra deck, obviously going to be predominantly synchros. We're running 2 Supreme Arcanite Magician with Miracle Synchro Fusion. Very powerful card when you have those spell counters going. Catastor, 2 Arcanite Magician, obviously. The other Arcanite Magician that is, again, very powerful when we're generating those spell counters. Armades, Beelze with some of our Dark, Black Rose, Goyo, Scrap Dragon, Tempest Magician with some of our cards we have access to, so more of a burn kind of variation on there. A lot of different synchros, we have a lot of different levels, but we're able to bring out a lot of these when we want to, which is very nice and gives us a lot of versatility in the deck type. We don't really have room for a lot of XYZs, so I just put in a few 4s that will be the most useful. Castel, Silent Honor, Exciton, and Lavalval Chain. Lavalval Chain because of some of the stuff we want to do with the graveyard. But there's a few other XYZs you can run. I will talk about them, but you really don't really have a lot of room between all the synchro stuff we're trying to do. So now for the side deck. If you haven't seen a video of mine before, in the side deck I kind of just go through other ideas, other recommended cards, other stuff I might do for the deck. Not really a side deck for matches, I just want to throw some stuff out there. Like I was saying, you could run BLS if you want. Spellbook Magician, you could run more prophecy cards to try to support the spellbooks, that's fine. This can combo well with some of the other stuff you're trying to do. Gather Your Mind is kind of like Spell Power Grasp. Magical Blast is another card that works really well for a deck like this because you keep getting it back. Megaton Magical Cannon, more for an OTK. You can set this up pretty easily with this deck type. It's just up to you whether you want to focus on this or not. Spellbook of Fate, depending on your spellbooks, this could be a fine card to make use of. Spellbook Star Hall, kind of annoying to maintain, but obviously can give you some additional power in a deck like this. Grand Spellbook Tower, if you don't want to run Endymion, you want to focus more on spellbooks, you could definitely run this instead for more like consistency with the graveyard and stuff like that. Toon Table of Contents, another free thing like Gather Your Mind and Upstart Goblin. They both are kind of free spells that you can use to generate counters, so not bad at all for this deck type. There are some other spell counter traps, Pitch Black Power Stone and Tower of Babel. Not the hugest fan of them, but you can work around them. I'm not really doing any traps in this deck, but that's something you can definitely go for if you want to try that out. And because we aren't running traps, you can just run Royal Decree if you want to run that as well. As I was saying, there are other XYZs you could run. Alchemic Magician and Downward Magician are two of the more spellcaster ones, which I feel like they're not super useful. It really depends on what you're trying to do. Maybe Downward Magician. If I wasn't running Lavalval Chain, I might run Downward. It's really up to you what you have room for. Maybe if I wasn't running Supreme Arcanite Magician, you might run other XYZs. It's really up to you. I don't think they're as useful as the other stuff I'm running, but obviously in certain situations, they can help a lot. So that's my spell counter deck. Again, just a deck focused on spell counters. You're going to try to generate them and activate effects. My first build, still experimental, still trying some stuff out. Really love to hear what you guys think of the build. And if you do have any suggestions, please let me know in the comments. Talk about what cards you use in your spell counter deck. I don't know if there's any new cards for this deck. I haven't really taken a look at that. I know there's going to be one that summons Gaia. I don't know if that'll be very useful for a spell counter deck, but we'll have to see, as time goes on, what we can do with this deck. But, as always, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you later.